Alright, so our first research initiative is the Collective Biorhythm Project, CBRP. Global Epigenetic and Consciousness Correlation Study, span 2026 through 2045. You guys might hear me eat a little bit in the background. Made some chicken and veggies, so... So, the long-term, slow-moving transits of outer planets, notably the Pluto and Aquarius generation, and the Saturn-Neptune conjunctions of the 2020s, 2050s, induced statistically significant measurable shifts in human collective biology and consciousness, operating through epigenetic pathways and synchronized psychological archetypes. Okay, so our methodology involves biochemical cohort tracking, which is a global cohort of 1 million participants stratified by dominant generational planetary placements. For example, Pluto and Capricorn versus Aquarius, annual sampling of epigenetic markers, DNA methylation patterns, histone modifications, correlated with precise transit charts, for example, Pluto square cohorts natal Saturn, collective emotional tone, measured via anonymized aggregated linguistic analysis of global media and later noospheric resonance scans, mundane astrology validation, the creation of event resonance maps, major historical turning points, for example, geopolitical accords, technological leaps, societal collapses, were analyzed against the USA's Pluto return, 2022 through 2024, and subsequent Pluto and Aquarius period. The hypothesis. Well, nations experience Pluto transits as structural death, rebirth, with events clustering at exact aspect dates. Here's the control mechanism. A parallel study of plant epigenetics in controlled biomes, subject to the same astrological timing but isolated from human cultural narratives to distinguish cosmic influence from psychosocial feedback loops. And now we look at our key predictions and findings as projected from 2026. So 2026 through 2029, we have the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries, was predicted to correlate with a global biochemical signature of discipline dissolution. Increased markers for stress adaptation coupled with neuroplasticity indicators, manifesting as mass movements restructuring, collapsed institutions with new idealism. 2035 through 2040, as Pluto concludes its first sweep of Aquarius, a measurable Aquarian leap in collective consciousness was anticipated, evidenced by a sharp decline in tribalism-linked stress markers and the spontaneous emergence of decentralized telepathy-adjacent communication forms. And I truly think people are going to try to communicate here soon via smoke signals, because you never know what's going to happen. So now let's look at our second research initiative, which is exocartography and xenoarchetypal analysis. Okay. So this is interstellar astrology applied to exoplanets and potential civilizations, span 2028 through 2060. Here's our core hypothesis. The principles of astrology are not solar system specific, but universal languages of consciousness. The chart of an exoplanet or star system reveals the archetypal themes, evolutionary challenges, and potential consciousness structures of any life or intelligence that evolves there. Let's look at our methodology. So chart casting for exoplanets, utilizing discovery data, moment of first confirmed observation by humanity as the birth. ICS teams cast charts for thousands of confirmed exoplanets, particularly those in habitable zones. Planetary placements in signs and houses were interpreted not for human fate, but for planetary personality and evolutionary destiny. The Drake equation synthesis. Astrological data was fed into a modified Drake equation. Factors like F_I, fraction of planets where life develops, F_L, and F_I, fraction where intelligence develops. These were assessed archetypally. For example, a system with a strong, well-aspected Jupiter-Saturn dynamic might suggest a higher Fi for civilizations, mastering structure and expansion. Here's our analysis of anomalous interstellar objects, AIOs. Objects like 3L or Atlas, 2025, 2026, Intercept were treated as natal charts of non-planetary entities. Their trajectory, composition, and timing were analyzed as one would a human life path. The signs, houses of their perihelion, and planetary encounters were read as the intent or message of the object. Key predictions and protocol. So our first contact protocol, the ICS contribution. Should contact with a non-human intelligence occur, standard scientific analysis would be paired with immediate xeno-archetypal charting. The first contact moment becomes a seminal event chart. Interpreting this chart would provide strategic insight into the contacting civilization's underlying motives, Martian aggression, mercurial curiosity, Neptunian merging, beyond any decoded message. The Loeb-Hawking conjecture test. A prediction that the first confirmed AIO of technological origin would have a discovered chart featuring Uranus, the Awakener. This discovery chart featuring Uranus, the Awakener, prominently angular or in hard aspect to Earth's natal planets, acting as a cosmic trigger for human evolution. Okay, so now let's look at the research initiative 3. The Kronos Project. Temporal mechanics and chart analysis across probable timelines span 2032 through 2050. Again, we'll just give these our little names. CH for our core hypothesis, M for our methodology. And here's a summary of our core initiatives, which I don't think that's actually part of it. So, the Kronos Project, or CH for core hypothesis, consciousness can access and astrology can map nonlinear time. Major planetary cycles, Saturn return, Uranus opposition, are not just personal triggers but temporal portals where the probability field of an individual's or collective's timeline becomes fluid, allowing for resonance with probable selves from alternative decision paths. M for methodology, retrocausal meditation and chart comparison. Advanced adepts during potent transits like a Saturn return were guided into states of quantum retrocognition. They were tasked with retrieving the birth chart and life trajectory of their self from the road not taken. For example, had they taken a different job at a prior Saturn square. Statistical analysis of divergent charts. These retrieved charts were compared against the primary natal chart. Consistent, statistically significant planetary shifts, for example, Venus moving from the 10th to the 7th house in the alternative path chart, were codified into a temporal choice signature for major life decisions. The Pluto line experiment. Using the slow movement of Pluto transforming a sign every 12 to 30 years, researchers identified individuals born within minutes of each other at the same location but across different years, sharing an ascendant but not a Pluto sign. This Pluto displacement cohort was studied to isolate the karmic evolutionary difference imposed by generational versus personal timing. And now let's look at our summary of core initiatives. The Collective Biorhythm Project, CBRP, and our focus for that is the biology of collective consciousness with the time span 2026 through 2045. Key method, correlating planetary transits with global epigenetic and psychological data. Predicted milestone, quantifying the Aquarian leap in human biology, 2035 through 2040. exocartography and xenoarchetypal analysis. Our focus, astrology of exoplanets and alien intelligence. Time span 2028 through 2060. Again, our key method, casting and interpreting charts for celestial bodies and contact events. Predicted milestone, developing the first contact archetypal protocol. And then we have our Chronos project, the focus being astrology across nonlinear time. Time span 2032 through 2050. Our key method, using meditation to retrieve alternative self-charts during major transits. Predicted milestone, codifying temporal choice signatures. Our conclusion for this tab is the synthesis of measurement and meaning. So students, remember that these studies represent the final bridging of a schism millennia old. Between the qualitative language of archetype and the quantitative rigor of science, we no longer ask if the cosmos shapes life, but how, and with what syntax of energy, time, and thought. The collapse was not an end, but the necessary prelude to this understanding, a Saturnian stripping away of technological distraction so that the Neptunian ocean of cosmic connection could finally be perceived and eventually measured. Here's the archivist note, 2070. CBRP's findings on the Aquarian leap were confirmed with a 99.7% statistical significance in 2042. Exocartography Division's first contact protocol was instrumental in peaceful interactions with the Kappa Reticuli emissaries in 2058. The Chronos Project's temporal choice signatures are now standard in our karmic counseling diplomas. The hypotheses were correct. Let's look at our final tab for this video.